Let's talk about the main event.
Yes.
Lights out match. Falls count anywhere. No disqualification. Anything goes. Lazy booking. When I heard that the women's match was going to take center stage and be the main event, I knew already before you called me that I should watch it. So I never intended to invoke the tooth and nail rule on this match. Because it is a women's main event, and it was an historic moment for AEW, so I wanted to watch it. And boy, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I never dreamed, and I don't know why I didn't see this coming all the way down the road. I never dreamed that they would make the women's match falls count anywhere, no DQ, anything goes, lazy booking garbage. But I was wrong. Let me say this at the outset. Both girls did a phenomenal job doing what they did. They took it seriously. They did their best. They worked hard. They bled. They took outrageous bumps. Wonderful job. Let me also say this at the outset. This was a crime against nature and should never have been allowed to fucking happen. That anybody would allow these two girls to go out and do that shit if they wanted to, much less book them to do it, is ridiculous. And it proved a point. There is no sexism in wrestling because male or female, garbage wrestling is garbage wrestling, regardless of who's doing it. It's still the shits. It's still stupid. It's still bad for the business. It's still egregiously low-class sideshow circus bullshit. Before we talk about the actual match, before anybody says, oh, Cornette hates the women, doesn't want the women to main event, what was my favorite match on WrestleMania last year?
Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte.
Exactly. By far the best match, the best thing on WrestleMania. The biggest company's biggest show. Why? Especially because that was one of the first empty arena shows right after the pandemic had hit. And instead of, as we found out, as anybody who's tried to do it already knows, angle fights and backstage bullshit of fights in empty arenas are death. And most grudge match, brawl type of matches in a completely empty arena are death. But those girls worked a contest. They worked an athletic competition with the sounds, and you could hear them hitting, and you could hear them grunting and squealing and screaming. But it wasn't stupid. It wasn't silly. Here's the difference. The difference is they talk about wanting a women's movement and wanting to respect them equally to the men. Well, if you watch Charlotte against Rhea Ripley at WrestleMania, you could respect them as athletes, even if you knew wrestling was a work. They looked like stars, and they were on a big budget program, and it was professional, and you could respect it, even if you weren't a wrestling fan. If you were a potential sponsor for a program, business that might want to sponsor a big TV show like that, you could look at that and say, well, I don't like wrestling, but God, those girls are athletes, they're attractive, and they're professional. Look at this budget. If a young girl, because now so many of these young girls are supposed to be looking up to their role models, right? And wanting to get in the business. So if a young girl wanted to be a wrestler and their parents, male or female, either one, were sitting in the room and watching Charlotte and Rhea Ripley at WrestleMania, same thing. Well, yeah, it's showbiz and it's fake, but gosh, they're athletes and they're making a lot of money, obviously. And look how costumed they are and the spectacle and the pageantry of this show. Well, our little Kathy probably will never be an athlete like that, but we could encourage her to do something like that. That wouldn't be the worst thing our daughter could do. You would want to sponsor it. You wouldn't freak out if your daughter said, I'd like to do that. If you look at that and you say this is a positive image of professional wrestling, whether it's a work or not. This, you think anybody wants to sponsor a show where there's a bunch of indie garbage, bad outlaw wrestling going on with bloody women rolling around in fucking thumbtacks? You think any parents would want their daughters to do that? You think that the guys sitting back in the locker room, if they had half a lick of sense, they were back there applauding them, they should be going, what the fuck? And they'd be going and slapping Tony Khan around the face and say, if you ever let the fucking girls do shit like this again, we'll all walk out. Because what have they got to do now? If a 120-pound girl can take a Death Valley driver off the top rope onto a fucking ladder and get covered and kick out after a 2 count, you need to take a goddamn battleship and flatten a fucking 275-pound man. It's making their job harder. It immunes the fans because let's face it, I'm sorry, but this may be sexist, but it is also the stone cold fact. Thunder Rosa versus Britt Baker will never headline a goddamn pay-per-view event that draws a legitimate amount of money. But guys in a grudge match, been heavily built up to, might. And they might want to use some of those goddamn bumps or moves. I was not upset about the women getting juice and bleeding in a vacuum. I was not upset about that concept. But the way that it was done, let's talk about the way it was done, and then let's talk about the way they could have done it. They have this match, falls count anywhere, no DQ, anything goes, lights out, lazy booking. They can't just let these girls have a match. Thunder Rosa and Serena Deeb, the best 2 fucking women they've got on their roster, that have had excellent matches every time they go out, despite what opponents they might be given. I know Serena's injured now, but Thunder Rosa is phenomenal as an athlete. She could have led Britt Baker to the best match that Britt Baker's ever had because she has come along as a worker and she's a good athlete. And they could have done something that might make women's wrestling look positive. But instead, they do the same shit the guys do that make wrestling look negative. Before the bell, Reba hits Thunder Rosa over the back with a crutch, and she has a fight with her, but Britt Baker blindsides her, and they do a big finish on the stage, the Rico Constantino's old finish when he was in OVW. She dropped her, boom, 1-2 on a 2 count, a bump on the stage in the first 15 seconds. And then immediately Britt Baker's got a chair. And Britt Baker beats Thunder Rosa with a chair. And then Thunder Rosa wears Britt Baker out with a chair. At that point, this early in the match, I had to pause it and walk off on it. Because if I was going to watch the whole thing, I needed a minute. Then they go over the rail and they fight in the arena. And they do spots with chairs where they're leaping off the chairs or leaping onto the chairs. Britt Baker and Reba set up a table at ringside and leave it there. They leave it there for later. They set it up for no reason. They leave the fight they're in, go out, set up a piece of furniture, and do nothing with it. Leave it there for later. And then, as a matter of fact, Britt tossed 4 or 5 chairs in the ring while Thunder Rosa was laying around waiting and getting her juice over on the corner. But then she had to lay there and settle on the steps forever while they filled up the ring with all these chairs. I know somebody told him, hey, go out and make some distraction while the girl's getting juice, but Jesus Christ. So now we've got 4 chairs, 5 chairs in the ring. They've already used a crutch, and they've already fought in the arena. Now they go to the break. They come back. Britt Baker gives Thunder Rosa a superplex off the top rope onto the 5 chairs, 2 count. This is fucking ridiculous. Ludicrous. If guys did it, it would be equally as stupid. Then Reba pulls a ladder out from under the ring. Thunder Rosa kicks the ladder into Britt Baker's face, and she gets juice after a while. In the middle of all this stupid, Thunder Rosa has great babyface fire and wonderful facials and good body language. Then Thunder Rosa pulls out a table and sets it up and left it sit and goes back in the ring. It's every bad indie match that's ever been had. Then Thunder Rosa does the DVD Death Valley Driver off the top rope onto the ladder on Britt Baker 2 count. Then Britt Baker DDTs Thunder Rosa on a chair and then hit the ropes and curb stomped her face first on the chair, got a 2 count. And then Reba hands Britt Baker a bag in, and Britt's got great juice. Thunder Rosa's was a little limits. They're both bleeding and blah, blah, blah. Reba hands Britt Baker a bag, and Britt Baker pours 1,000,000 thumbtacks out of the bag. And I'm out. That was it. I couldn't take any more, and I'm done. What happened from there?
I didn't write down spot for spot what happened, but...
Who won? Who cares?
Thunder Rosa won.
What'd she win with? A double-barreled shotgun or a fucking sledgehammer?
I agree. Look, I was able to lose myself in the match. Even though there's a lot of shit I really hated, I hated the thumbtacks. And as soon as I saw that, I said, Jim is going to really hate this. But other than the thumbtacks, I was able to lose myself in the match and enjoy it. Especially with the spectacle of all the blood on Britt Baker. Because it kept coming. It was nonstop. I agree with all the points you made about the stupidity of, and it's not.
Well, here's another point. The blood was the shocking part, right? Women bleeding. Double juice girls match. When's the last time you saw that? So why did they have to take every hat out of the hat store and put it on top of this hat of a match?
I don't even understand why they had this match for this feud. How did we get to the level where they needed a lights out, no DQ match? How did we get here?
I'll tell you exactly, because Tony Khan or somebody gave him the idea, or they came up with the idea, we'll have a double juice girls match. And of course, since he's a mark and he's not in charge and he doesn't know how to say no or when to say no, he let him do it.
I bet you it was his idea.
Oh, and it could be, and very well then it's, okay, I'm going to have a double juice girls match. It's like having a fucking stadium that needs a match rather than a match that needs a stadium. You've decided what you're going to do, and then you put 2 people in it that can do it. That doesn't mean that it makes any sense. But the point is, why would anybody want to watch 2 men, let alone 2 women, roll around bloody in thumbtacks? It's fucking stupid. Male or female, there's no sport or legitimacy or display of talent or anything else about the garbage matches. And all it does is make the business look bad and make it look like a goddamn sideshow. And they could have really done something positive for the women and let them get over by giving them a main event match and letting them have a match and show what they have in the way of talent instead of hitting each other with blunt shit and being stuntmen doing tricks. And you can still do a double juice women's match. That's another thing. That's why Dana White never wanted a women's match or a women's division in the UFC, because he didn't want the sponsors to see girls having a bloody fight. Until along came somebody who could draw him a ton of money on pay-per-view, and then he relented, but still they would never do something like this because they want mainstream acceptance. They want legitimacy. They want people to respect what they do. We used to also in this business somewhat. We wanted to make money first, but we wanted people to have a positive image of it instead of this goddamn circus, sideshow, sewage business. And so besides that, you could still do it. Start having a match. Start having an athletic, professional wrestling match between 2 women. And then suddenly Thunder Rosa gets kicked off or out of a move or misses a charge or whatever, and she hits the post. Head first, boom, and she goes down, and now she comes up bleeding. And it's accidental, allegedly. And Britt Baker can look and be shocked, but then she turns into the heel because now she starts working on the cut. She's not putting her through tables and suplexing her off the top rope. She's working on an injury and being a fucking vicious heel doing it. And let Thunder Rosa with those facials and that fire sell. And Britt Baker waltzes her across Texas. And then maybe finally she makes a mistake, and then Thunder Rosa starts the comeback, and now she's got the fire and the blood in her face. And now Britt Baker's backing up and backpedaling and begging off, and she's bumping Britt Baker everywhere. And finally, Reba tries to do something with a chair, and goddamn, boom, Thunder Rosa pickles her, and the referee's shoveling Reba out of the fucking ring. And Thunder Rosa picks that chair up and looks at her, Britt Baker, and says, "You bitch, you busted me open." One shot with a fucking chair, boom. And down goes Britt Baker, and she comes up bloody. And now it's happening naturally. It looks like a contest. It's not a bunch of furniture stunts. It's not a bunch of garbage that people are cooperating with each other to hurt each other on purpose and roll around in sharp shit to appeal to the lowest common denominator of the audience. You've got a women's athletic contest that has gotten control has been lost in a controlled fashion. And these girls are bleeding now. Whichever one you want to go over, you put them over in a fucking finish. But you've had a 15 or 20-minute main event match. You've had your double juice, but it wasn't done egregiously or in poor taste. It looked like it happened organically and part of the fucking contest. And you haven't put a hat on a hat. And you also haven't killed every finish for every man in the company henceforth that couldn't sell anything after these girls bore up under all of this.
Nobody sells anything anyway.
But I'm just saying there's a difference between girls bleeding and what is presented as a contest where the blood is an unfortunate and or accidental byproduct of the overall thing, and two girls obviously doing cooperative stage shit, because you can't do this furniture bullshit and make it look real. Obviously doing cooperative fake shit, choreographed to go through furniture and hit each other with shit and bleed on purpose with no pretense of a contest, just doing fucking, wrestling porn for the weakest minded individuals out there that like that kind of deathmatch bullshit. That's what I'm not upset that I'm upset that it's men or women doing these matches, and it's especially stupid to have the women doing it, and it's especially stupid when the other fucking company has highly trained women that look like stars and work like stars and perform like stars, and they give them that opportunity, and this fucking company gets a chance to answer that. And they have a garbage, independent, outlaw death match between two girls where they're obviously aiding each other in all of this, and it's just a freak show. This, to me, was almost as distasteful as when they brought that fucking Judas Messias, a Mexican guy from AAA, wherever he was working, into TNA, and he came through the ring and attacked Abyss, broke a bottle, and was taking the broken glass and ripping it down Abyss's arm, and Abyss was blading his arm because Abyss is a wonderful guy and I like him, but he's a goddamn complete idiot with that fucking hardcore bullshit. Thumbtacks and blading your arm and shit. And all I could sit there and do it, watching the monitor, all I could think was, Spike is going to see this and kick us off the air. Because everybody watching this knows that this is phony. But they also know that the cuts are real, which means they know he's cutting himself. Which means, what the fuck? Why would you ever watch that show again where the guy is obviously slicing his arm up instead of being ripped up with broken glass because they're so goddamn stupid they can't figure out a way to get personalities over and have wrestling matches and draw money with them? And it's the same kind of shit. And I'm about fed up with it. That's what I thought about that match. They lost their chance to be taken seriously as professional athletes, and now we know that Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa are just as good as having garbage matches that require no talent as all the guys are. That's what they accomplished there.
I thought they were better.
Changed my mind.
I enjoyed this match as a garbage match better than the last few we've seen from other people on the roster.
Well, that's true. They did a better job of having a garbage match in bad taste than anybody else in the company.
I hate thumbtacks. I hate when they turn the lights out. I hate the handcuffs. Each week I get to talk about things I hate that we see way too often. The bag of thumbtacks.
I'll watch the handcuffs, but thumbtacks, I don't care who does it. Jerry Lawler pulls out, well, like Jerry Lawler would have ever pulled out thumbtacks in his match. But if Jerry Lawler pulls out thumbtacks in his match, I'm done.
Lawler would have used push pins. But no, look, I was able to lose myself in the match and enjoy it, other than the thumbtacks. That was the one spot that I groaned. I was just like, ugh, this is so unnecessary. I've had a thumbtack go into my knee. It wasn't that big a deal. So don't show me like, oh my God, it's thumbtacks. Oh my God, how will they ever deal with it?
And of course, 45 of them in your back aren't any fun, but that's what makes anybody watching that say, well, these are just stupid, stupid people. Just very stupid people. Because falling in thumbtacks or throwing someone in thumbtacks is not going to win you the match. It's not going to beat anybody. It's just stupid freak show bullshit from these basement dwelling nerds. Have you seen now stepping on Legos is a thing they're doing in death matches on the Outlaws? Because everybody knows how painful it is to step on a Lego. It's become wrestling for bloodthirsty, low-class, unsavory children under the age of 14, whether physically or mentally, is what we've come to here.
And like you kind of said earlier, I thought, despite what the match was, and I didn't mind it as much as you did, Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa did a great job.
Yes, I can't fault their effort or their execution. I can only fault them ever being allowed to do this in the first place.
I think a lot of this is bad booking. Like I said, they've had a feud. They're attacking each other. They're, pouring water on her face paint, whatever's going on. It seems like it went to a lights-out, no DQ match pretty quickly.
Well, that escalated quickly. But you know what? And here's the thing. Maybe did you see they also, I'll say this, we're going to stop talking about this fucking television program. But they released backstage footage of everybody being led by Tony Khan himself coming up and applauding the girls when they came back and telling them what a great job they did in their performance. Because it's all fake. They're applauding the effort that the girls put in and having that fake match. Because if that was a real fight, would you be applauding or would you be calling an ambulance for these girls and concerned about their health? But no, they applaud them. They tell them how great they all did. Then they take them to the back, and there's the footage of Britt Baker while being attended to by the doctor, asking if they think Meltzer will give this 5 stars because that's what she was going for. And folks, that's what's wrong with wrestling today too.
And he didn't.
Well, God damn it. Talk about a kick in the fucking boy. He just fucking he didn't even give them 5 stars after they went through all that. He gives everybody else all this shit.
I believe, I don't have the Observer in front of me.
Their match was better than anything Twinkle Toes does. He didn't give that 5 stars.
I believe it got 4 and maybe either 4.5 or 4 3/4.
Wow, just because she asked for it, probably. That's why he couldn't give it to her. Well, the whole thing. Remember, was that a question on the Drive-Thru last week? Did the wrestlers of the 80s ever wonder whether they were going to get 5 stars or not? And I fucking blew snot laughing. Said they wouldn't know if afterwards, if they got 5 stars, they wouldn't be aware of it. Wrestling for children, by children, to get the praise that they somehow don't get in their empty lives.
Do you want the ratings?
Sure.
NXT, 597. AEW
745.
768.
No, I was off by 23. So in other words, nothing's changed.
No growth.
They can have the second coming of Karl Gotch and George Hackenschmidt or 2 drunks in an alley fighting, and it'll be the same basic numbers from week to week on either program.